Okay, thank you, and welcome here. It's a real pleasure, it's a real honor for me to be speaking to all of you, to be invited to this conference. Today I'm going to present some work that's been done at Arletti & Partners, a company in Italy. We're going to start straight away because we have a dance program. How do I go on to the next slide? Is it my fault? Okay. Sometimes you need to be pointed. So I'll take the opportunity to say that it's been done by Alessandro Arletti, the CEO, which is here, me, and Riccardo Malacarne, who is following from home. So, all right, so okay, great. So we're going to start with two problems, which are setting in the field of sending workers abroad, so posting workers across the European Union, and two solutions, and both solutions use AI. So we're going to start off with the first problem, and as we all know, when sending workers abroad across the European Union, we have some legislation, some laws that we have to fulfill as employers. So for example, you might have to change the salary of your worker, of your employee, in order to match their class of the same job in the country you're sending your worker to. So you have a lot of documentation, and you have to make sure that you abide to the most recent legislation. So legislations can change quickly. So take as an example, during COVID, it could be usual for legislation regarding the required vaccination to enter in a country to change every week, right? So you have to stay updated, and you have to have the most recent information available. We all know this is not an easy task, because there's a lot of information to cover if you want to send workers abroad. So first we have the directives from the European Union, which are translated into laws. Then we have additional integrations of those laws. And then we have also praxis, jurisdiction, so court rulings. So there's a lot of material, a lot of documents. This is for each European country. How can you stay on top of all of this? Well, you can employ some software. You can employ a change detection software. We tried this in the past. It's a very simple piece of software that allows you to compare two documents online. For example, you might go to the website of the Belgian government and take a look at the recent legislation. And if it finds any difference, maybe a new law came out, you get a notification. Then you can go and check the notification and see if actually it matters to you or you should just ignore it. So it's a very simple software. We tested it, but it has many drawbacks. And the first one is that websites change all the time for reasons which are not relevant to legislation, right? So maybe some official government website might have some apps that change, maybe if the weather changes, right? So this is going to send you a notification. And you go check and nothing changed. The law is still the same, you just have this noise. And this gives a lot of, let's say, false alarms. But in addition to this, we really also, this is a task relying heavily on human effort, right? If somebody who checks the new legislation doesn't control properly, doesn't pay enough attention, they may miss some important aspects of it. So you really have vulnerability on human control there. So you really need a lot of people just to check that you're not missing, not leaving anything out. How we use AI to make this task, to make this easier, to solve this problem. And we use ChatGPT API to improve on the standard change detection algorithm. So we start from the standard algorithm that I showed before. And then when a notification arrives, we use ChatGPT to filter out all notifications which are useless. So basically, you know, if just a day changed. So you only get a notification with regards actually some legislative change that you might be having to pay attention to. Then we also use ChatGPT to inform our employees if actually the notification is important. So basically, ChatGPT automatically reads the text and gives you a score depending on how important the notification is. So in this way, you are sure not to miss anything. So we improve also on precision in this case. We make sure that you can stay on top of all the legislation. And we implement this with AWS, but we also have a demo of this working. It should be a video, and if I click, it should start, yes. So this is our proprietary platform, and we're showing this in action. So as you can see, this is a web page that we took from a government website, and this is talking about legislation that you have to fulfill, right? And it actually is highlighting some parts that have changed because legislation have changed. We use ChatGPT to automatically scan for this modification And ChatGPT is going to automatically give us a scoring. And in this case, a 75%. So basically telling us, well, pay attention to this because actually there's something new happening. And since we receive dozens of notifications every day, it is easy to miss something. With this system in place, we make sure that we don't leave anything out. All right, so this was the first solution. We move to the second problem. It is also in the field of sending workers abroad. So as you know, when you're sending an employee to another country, in a European country, you have something which is called the duty of care. So you have to make sure that your employee enjoys the same services, quality of the services in the country where he's going. So for example, if you're sending a worker to Belgium, you have to make sure that the healthcare in Belgium is as good as the country where he's coming from. If not, then it's not the case, then you might have to add some private insurance on top of the employee contract in order to compensate for this. So if you are an employer, you have to make a decision. Do I have to add some private insurance on top or not? And what do you base your decision on is actually very important. So in our case, we have a big problem. So how can you actually measure the quality of such a complex service, such as healthcare in another country? It's very complicated. There's no single index. There's hundreds of thousands of indicators. So it's really difficult, right? So one thing you could do, you could say, well, I can make a decision based on some third parties. For example, other countries, like the US, they provide risk assessments, which are documents, hundreds of pages long, very long, where they give indication about, for example, the quality of healthcare in Belgium and any other European country. So you could base your judgment and your decision on these documents. You could say, well, the US think the Belgium healthcare is pretty good, so I don't need any additional insurance. You can gather many. Can I move on? Okay, so you can gather many risk assessments and say, well, if everybody thinks Belgium is actually very nice healthcare, then I don't need to add any private insurance. So you can base your decision of this kind of information, a third party provided information. So what you would like to end up in the end is a nice clean table where you have everybody's opinion regarding Belgium's healthcare in a nice readable table. So you can take a look at the table and think, okay, I can make my decision. These are the sources. This country think Belgium healthcare is good. But actually, this table is not easy to find. It's nowhere to be found readily online. There is no such thing as this table. You have to make it yourself. How can you do this? Well, the simple way is just you take the documents and you read through the documents and you provide and you get yourself an opinion. And you say, well, here is said that Belgium healthcare is pretty good. But this is kind of vulnerable, but first is a very tedious task. It's a very human-intensive task, first. And second, you may make some mistakes. You might lose track of certain pieces of information. Healthcare is just an example. You might have to take into consideration personal security, education. There's a lot of things to take care of. So the human error here can be very costly, especially when you need to make a decision like this. So what we do, we use ChatGPT again, the ChatGPT AI, API, sorry, to basically improve this task and make it easier. So we start from the risk assessment documents, which are hundreds of pages long. We use ChatGPT together with a human to segment the document into smaller chunks depending on the content. So we can isolate the parts where it's talking about healthcare. And then we use ChatGPT again to come up with a table that you can see, as you can see there. So in that table, basically, first you're collapsing all the repeated information because remember, each assessment is talking about the same country, so there's going to be a lot of repeated information. You hide in that information. Looking at the table, you can make your own decision very quickly, and you can decide if the worker needs an additional insurance or not. And also you have you're keeping track of who said what, so you can base your decision on a solid ground of sources. We also have a demo from our proprietary platform. This is also in production, recently in production right now. As you can see, we are going for the case of Venezuela. This is generated automatically, so you can see for each statement you have the countries that produce that statement. We have the titles of the country. And then we just regenerating again, so you can take a look. And so basically, we are taking all the documents and we are generating the new report. And it takes a while. There's a lot of documents, but in the end you can see it's giving you statements of qualities of services together with the country who said that, so you can make a decision. And you can also prioritize maybe if a statement has been said by more countries, maybe that statement is more true. and this is going on. So also it gives you what singular country says. So you really have a lot of information available. So we also have another part, but I think we're going to skip this for reasons of time. So we're going to move on to the lessons learned. So really, we are using AI to make a task simpler, to make it easier, and also to make sure that human errors are reduced as much as possible, because we're dealing with a lot of documents, a lot of information. So first, I want to clarify that every time we use AI, we also make random checks with humans. So, and we find that the combination of the two is always better than AI alone. And second, as I was saying, if only you had humans, if you had to read 10 documents, you need 10 hours. If you need to read 100, you need 100 hours, right? So it's more and more work. With AI, we can scale this very easily. So scalability is a great plus, is a great advancement here that AI allows us to do. Especially because we are checking the legislation of all the European member states, and it's a lot of documentation, and we also other countries above the European Union. And we also are, as I said, the risk assessment coming from 7 countries, but we could easily expand. So this makes sure that the complexity of all this documentation, the complexity of all this legislation is dealt easily. So it makes it easier to stay on top of all that you need to take care of. And AI allowing us to do this very easily. So that was it. That was my presentation. I'll thank you very much, and I'll be taking any question up later.